UK Crime Book Club. I can't believe it's Friday night. Friday night already. And we are here with the lovely MJ White. I am so excited, absolutely thrilled. Love the Cora Layell series. I knew I was going to get it wrong. And introduce yourself, show off your books, and let's talk about this series.
So I am MJ White. I'm also known as Miranda Dickinson. I write contemporary fiction, contemporary romance as Miranda Dickinson, but MJ White is my crime. I've got my crime writer's hat on tonight. I'm the author of The Writer. I'm the writer of this series. I'm going well. I'm the author of the Cora Layell crime series. So I'm almost prepared and everything. So Secret Voices was the first book in the series, and then Silent Child was the second book in the series, and then my brand new book, which has just come out, is Leave No Trace. It's the third one in the series. And Cora is a psychologist. She's a doctor of psychology, and she has a unique gift. She has a form of synesthesia, which is emotional synesthesia. So if you can imagine, if you touch an object, you leave a physical fingerprint. Cora can sense emotional fingerprints, so she can hear voices from objects, which in some police things that she gets called into are really useful because it helps her to hear missing people and thoughts that people don't want you to hear, and so it kind of gives a different edge to the investigation. So that's the series in a nutshell.
And I was just saying before we went live, I absolutely love this series. I love Cora. I love what you've done with the team. Just the whole vibe of the books. I've said it's like a hug in a book. You know, it's crime fiction, but it's just so lovely as well.
Thank you.
So I love the feeling that I get from reading one of your books.
That's really lovely to hear, because you worry when you start a new genre. I mean, I've in reality been writing Cora for the last 10 years, but I only got her published recently. So it took 10 years to get her for other people to be able to read her. But you always worry that it's kind of, I'm known for one type of genre, and can I write? Writing a crime novel is totally different. So I feel like I've been on the fastest, scariest apprenticeship for the last 18 months getting these 3 books out. And as well, because I went from writing a novel a year to writing 3 in 18 months for Cora, but it was just been so much fun. Because you kind of keep in with them, and it's lovely to go back and have the same cast and go back and see what's happening with them. And so there's each one of the cast, like the supporting cast and the CID team, they all have storylines that are developing, and they're developing with each book. So that's so much fun as an author, because you just kind of get to play with them and make their lives difficult, which is fantastic. If any crime author will tell you, that's the thing that we live for, I think.
And as much as that's not probably been fun for you, the whole it's taken 10 years to get to this point with her, that's really kind of comforting to anybody out there who's writing, because you're already a successful author.
Yeah.
I mean, you've sold a lot of books. So,
I sold 1 million books.
Yeah. I mean,
which over a long time, over 14 years, which is amazing. But I had 30 rejections for Cora. Ranging from people going, why is she writing a crime novel, to people going, I'm sorry, her gift is what? It went over, we had one lot of submissions that went out in 2017, and then we had another lot of submissions, which was when lovely Hero Books found me, and they're brilliant, and they were worth waiting for. Although you know, when you're going through rejections, you don't feel like you're ever going to find the right person, and then you find the right person, and it's great. But yeah, it was all kind of, people didn't know, why is she writing crime? Is it cozy crime? It's not cozy crime. If you've read the books, there ain't nothing cozy about it.
Definitely not cozy.
Yeah, so, and then you kind of doubt yourself, and you think, oh, I'm only going to be recognised for one type of book. But honestly, it's waiting for the right time, because in 2017 you hadn't had the 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, you hadn't had Behind Her Eyes, or not. I think it had just come out, but it was that there hadn't been anything in the crime genre that had really pushed the envelope. And so as soon as those things happen, publishers go, oh, right, okay, I know that's different. It's got a psychological twist and it's fine. When we first took Cora out, nobody wanted police procedurals. If you weren't Anne Cleesery or Rankin, they were like, not interested. I remember being asked to come up with an idea for a second book in case they asked for a series. Whereas now, which is lovely to see, there's so many fantastic police procedurals, I think, have just got a new lease of life, and they're coming back. They've always been brilliant. People are falling in love with them again.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's just a waiting game. And I think I think as an author, as a writer, you have to be a bit of a time traveler in a way. You have to kind of be able to look into the future, because any idea that you have is going to take 18 months to 2 years, even if it gets picked up right then. So I think that's the thing. I think it's really hard when people are saying no, but the stories that don't go away, they're the ones that come back and they do find a home. And I mean, I've been writing now I'm in my 14th year of writing. Very old lady now. My 14th year of writing, and I can tell you that there's stories that I've had that people didn't want, and then I've gone with a different publisher and they wanted it, and it's 3 years down the line. I mean, Cora's the longest I had to wait for that story to be published. They're so worth the wait. And actually, you just, when you look back, it's a lot easier, but at the time, but it's just, I think the stories are there, and I think readers know, because I mean, I didn't have any of the questions that I had from those rejections. I've had none of those from readers, which shows that readers know what they're talking about, and publishers are really risk averse. So you've got to kind of wait till they're persuaded, and then when they think it's their idea, it's fine. so it's just a waiting game, but it's hard. And like, big love to everybody who's in that position now. You just got to keep going, and it's horrible, and but you get there. You do get there.
It is interesting, the idea that the publishers, they want to be the first one to do something, but they also want it to be a little bit tried and tested before they'll put the money into it.
It's because
it's a difficult balance for everybody involved. Worse for the authors, though.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as you become an author, you learn that waiting is a big part of the job, and it's the bit you hate the most, because you're always waiting for somebody else to make a decision. Yeah. And I think even my friends who are successfully self-published, they're still waiting for them. There's waiting for things to be, to come onto the market. There's waiting for people to catch on to what you're doing. And so it's kind of, once you realize that's part and parcel of the job, you kind of just tell yourself you've got, it's necessary and you've got to go through it. I think now that we're getting a lot of smaller publishers, I think they're taking more risks. I think you see that with Arenda Books, amazingly. Yeah. You see that with Hera. I mean, Hera started out as quite a, relatively small compared to the big 5 publishers. Yeah. But actually, they've gone in directions that are braver because they kind of can. And actually, I like that. So that gives me hope for the future, that it's not just going to be celebrity ghostwritten novels and tried and tested and rehashes of things that are already out there, that there is the opportunity for new stuff. And I think the more that we get these brilliant small publishers, you see it with Storm now, you see it with Book Couture as well, really kind of, they can take that bit of a risk, that bit more of a risk. And I think that's exciting for readers as well, because it means we get to read different stuff.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I mean, what you've hit on is something that works within the framework, but also has a different slant. And finding the balance of the right kind of different slant as well. Literally, hats off to you. It's just, I can't even imagine you hit upon this idea and then you think, well, I've not seen this before. Is that a good thing? Or have we not seen it because nobody wants it? Or is it not going to be good? Or, you kind of must drive yourself insane a little bit with it.
I think you just trust your gut. You have to trust your gut. You've not got, as a writer, you have no control over anything but the story, that initial idea and how you see it through. And once you realise that, then it's kind of fun. It's sort of a dare. The Secret Voices started out as a dare. Can I write a dark story? Because when I was writing I've written short stories for years. And I found that when I was writing short stories, they were a lot darker than the stuff that I was known for publishing. So it was kind of, could I keep this going for a novel length story? And so Cora it was kind of my little hobby. It was my little kind of dare, especially when you're in the middle of edits of something else. It's quite nice to cheat on them. Don't tell, I hope my publishers aren't watching. Cheat on it with something that's your own project. And I always have projects on the go that people haven't come across yet. And so obviously when Cora was published, I had to come up with another one, but I have another thing that I'm working on at the moment, which is another series. And it's just fun. It's just for me at the moment. But it's always good to have something that you feel is just yours, because the more people that get involved, which is necessary in publishing, the less it feels like your initial idea, because you're having to work at it. Strangely enough, once it's in a book, then you own it and it's wonderful. It's your story again. But when you're going through work with it, not so much. But yeah, Cora started as a dare. Can I scare myself? And so that's where I think I succeeded. Yeah.
And we've got some hellos here. So hello everybody who is there at the moment. Kaz loves the hats.
Thank you.
And she said, awesome taste in recent reads. I saw you're a Rivers of London fan on Twitter.
Yes.
And we've got hellos from Laura and Michelle, who's Jack Mackintosh series I've started. I interviewed Michelle on Wednesday. Oh, love it. They've been republished. So the whole thing of, publishing yourself and then finding somebody else who wants them and being brave after a couple of glasses of wine and thinking, I'll submit and see what happens. And Absolutely. Here we are, republished series. So yeah, loved it.
So well, congratulations, because that's a huge thing. And I think as well, when you go through publishing, you can feel that if your book doesn't do anything in the first 2 weeks, like, it's going to be forgotten, and that's fine. But I think readers know, because readers will come and find you at different stages. And then, like you say, now there are publishers that are looking for people who have successfully self-published, and they're relaunching whole series. It's great. I think it's a really exciting time for readers.
Yeah, I absolutely think it's brilliant when publishers will take on somebody's books and really give them a new lease of life and just run with it. I just think that's fantastic, because not many publishers, in the experience that I've got of dealing with them, have, are willing to do that. And it's becoming a bit more, people are a bit more open to that now, which I think is brilliant.
Yeah, and I think, they will never admit it, but they are led by readers. They're led not by focus groups, which they like to tell you they are, but they're led by what readers want. And it's really funny that if you look at the books that have been runaway successes in the last 5-10 years, 9 times out of 10 it's been because readers have discovered them and spread the word and got excited and shared them in lovely groups like this. And that, I think, as a reader, you don't realize the power that you have. And from author's perspective, I would always be more excited by what a reader says about my book than what a publisher or somebody in the industry says, because it's a different slant. As I'm a reader first and a writer second, so I know what it's like when I read a book. I do this on I have a Facebook show on a Wednesday night, which is where I was recommending the latest Rivers of London last night. And I just
Five Night in Chatty thing.
Five Night in Chatty thing. It's got the longest name ever, because it was supposed to be a placeholder name that was 3 years ago, and it's kind of stuck. But yeah, we recommend books on there, and it's books that I've read and that I've loved. And so it's that thing of, I think readers make the difference eventually, and readers that stick with a series when it's with one publisher and then a publisher takes it on and revitalize it, those readers come back because you want the new versions. And it's just, that's why I think we let the publishers think they're in charge, but really it's all up to us.
I don't know if this is going to be a daft question or not, but I'm intrigued. When you're writing one thing, do you ever find that you merge into another genre and actually it becomes something quite different while you're writing it? Or are you planning and sticking with your idea and it never veers off?
At the moment, it doesn't. I can't say it won't in the future. I've been quite fortunate with where edits on one book have come, and then I'm writing, doing proofs on another one, or it's kind of slotted in okay so far. You do sometimes feel like your head's splitting too, because you've got really dark crime on the one hand and then happy ever afters on the other. But they kind of inform each other. That's what I found. So I found that since I've been writing crime, my contemporary fiction has more twists in it. It has more pace in it. I have more fun building up the ending, even though contemporary romance, really, it's quite lineal. You've got all your characters here, and you want to get them to the end, and you put loads of obstacles in their way. Crime fiction is totally different. But then my crime fiction, I think, in terms of characterization, I have more fun. You're starting to find out the private lives of the South Suffolk CID team, which I haven't seen in a lot of police procedurals. There's some writers that I really love, and you see that stuff going on in their lives. Anne Cleves does it incredibly, and I love that kind of who they are at work and who they are at home, and whether they take stuff at home, whether they hide stuff at work, which one of my characters is doing at the moment, and how that informs what they're investigating, how it informs them. I think a lot of that comes from my contemporary stuff, because you're in people's heads a lot in that kind of book, and you're thinking about why they're doing things, and you kind of almost giving the reader a little bit of an insight into them, rather than just, we've got to solve this investigation, we've got to find the murderer, we've got to do whatever. It's kind of what else is going on in their heads while they're doing it. What are they scared of? where have they come from with their past. I think that's the sort of thing for me that fascinates me. So it's been lovely to put that in, but so far I haven't had any crossovers. But if you suddenly get, I know that there's lots of readers who are interested in a certain particular romance that might be happening within the series. There's a lot of people very invested in that already.
I'm willing to wait for this to develop at whatever pace feels right to you as you're writing them, because it's really working.
Oh, that's good. It's good if it's working. You do worry because you're like, well, I don't want people going, no, just put a romance in there. It's just romance, right? But yeah, and also because every brilliant police procedural has love interest, has chemistry, and all of that stuff. I mean, I'm thinking of like the Maeve Kerrigan series. I mean, that is ongoing. And I think Jane Casey just loves the fact that she hangs us on every book. I think, what are they doing? Are they doing something? But that's brilliant as a reader because, like you say, well, you're watching it and what is it going to happen? And it's almost going to happen, and then it's going to come back. And it's quite fun as a writer to think how far you can push it before you bring it back. But yeah, so there are elements in both, but hopefully I haven't crossed from one to the other yet.
No bloody murders in the middle of your romances yet.
Well, no, although in Fairy Tale of New York, which was my very first novel, I kill off an old couple in quite a gruesome way that I'm not sure I would get away with now. There's an old Belarusian man that comes in, set in a florist, and on the second Thursday of every month he buys a bunch of yellow roses to go home and propose to his wife again. And he's done this for 60 years, except he never pays for them. He swaps the story, and it's like, oh, this is true love. And then, yeah, I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but you do find out that it might not be everything that it seems, and he might die of a broken heart quite tragically. And it's really funny that it was quite dark back then, but no one noticed it at the time. I got away with it. I don't think I get away with it now. I think like, that's a bit too dark. But yeah, so there's obviously always been a history of me wanting to bump people off.
Oh, clearly, yeah.
I've just finally given in to the temptation now, and it's out in the
open. Laura said, series sounds interesting. Did you have experts to help with the Cora character?
I have got a police expert, which is lovely. Lovely PC Steve Franklin, who is my police advisor, who's brilliant. Who is just things like, yeah, if you come to call an arms response unit, they'll be out in 3 days. Like that, you kind of thing's really useful. For Cora, I did a lot of research on synesthesia, which is not what she has, but because her condition is completely imagined. But it's based on, you could get people that have synesthesia can kind of see colours and they can taste words. And so I was looking at what would happen if your emotions were crossed rather than your senses being crossed. So I read a lot about synesthesia. So I wanted to make sure that I presented what she had as kind of, she's getting to know who she is rather than looking at all the things she can't do. So in the first book, very much it's kind of her going, how can I use this? She's battled with it for a long time to come to terms with it. And now she's going, okay, well, this is something I can actually use. And it's really important because there's this little girl that's gone missing and I can help the police, and it's how she gets involved with the police. But I think hopefully as the books go on, you see her kind of really sort of leaning into what she can do. And I didn't want it to be, I was really careful that I didn't want it to be an ableist sort of thing. She's got this thing wrong with her brain. She hasn't got a wrong thing with her brain. She has an ability. And now she's looking at how she can use that. She's really pushing into it. And so I have made sure that I've checked it with people who have different cognitive divergence, and sort of, to make sure that I'm not doing the, I'm not belittling that experience. I'm trying to present it as authentically as possible. So yeah, I take that really seriously because I want to make sure that every reader sees her for, really going for it and not as a kind of, this looks good, I'll just stick it in and I haven't really thought about it. So I hope
it's clear when you think about it. It's clear that you have thought about it. There's no sensationalism. There's no, I'm just going to throw this in there because I think that's what will make this work. It's very well thought out, and I like the way that you are letting Cora learn as she goes along and be in control of it, because she's very respectful with it. She'll let it run when she needs to, but never for very long. She knows how to mute it. She knows how to get it's really more of the vibe that she gets from people, isn't it? And the atmosphere around her, and reading between the lines a little bit.
Yeah, and I
So
think
I do feel like all the work you've put in has really paid off.
oh, that's so good. That's so good to hear, because you do worry. I've read so many books where you have, you know, I mean, particularly one of the books that the Silent Child, there is an abuse storyline within it. I was really careful not to have that as a sensationalist thing.
Yeah.
I have experience of abuse myself, and so it was that thing of just really showing the survivor, really showing, putting it in real terms, because it's not. I've seen it on so many, particularly TV programs, where they kind of stick it in, and it's like, oh, it's a big shock, and it's quite gratuitous, and I didn't want it to be like that. So I'm so pleased that comes across that way, because it's a constant worry, but I think that's a good thing to be worried about it, because I don't ever want to take any of it for granted. And nice in the series that I can show that progression. It isn't just, you don't get to the end of the Secret Voices and go, so everything's all right, because it isn't. It changes, and it changes all the characters every case. The characters never finish how they begin, and that's kind of something that I was really hot on, to make sure that those characters are like that in the books.
Yeah, and it must be really lovely for you. You've touched on this a bit already, but it must be really lovely for you to get to know the characters, because you are exploring the story through several points of view. Did you say there's 6 in this one? I didn't count, but
there's 6. Actually, Leave No Trace, there might be more, because you have this true crime documentary that's being mentioned, and there is this very strange kind of online worldwide watches.
Yes, you are very good at giving me the creeps when you want to.
I gave myself the, could you know, that was, you know, you were saying about things crossing over. When I was writing those scenes, I had to go and write something happy for a bit afterwards, because I felt quite creeped out myself.
Yeah, no, I can imagine needing
and
that
also,
outlet.
Top tip is, if you're going to write about online kind of incel things, don't do a lot of online study, because just after a while you're like, oh, my life, that's quite scary. But so I did need to go and watch something happy. All right, I had to go and watch Ted Lasso. That's what I did. I went and sat and watched Ted Lasso, and I was fine after that.
I think it's Laura Hamilton. No, it's not Laura who said readers rock, as do bloggers. Who has said that? Oh, that's Michelle. So I mean, you must spend a lot of your time talking to, well, people like me, people who are massive readers, who really enjoy, really getting into grips with it, but also so excited to talk to authors about books.
I love that as well. I love that as well, because if you just talk to journalists, and not that I get the chance to do that, but it makes it sound like I hear it all the time. I really don't. But you get to talk to journalists, very often they're people who don't read, and they're not they're not excited by books. The chance to get to talk to yourself, and you know so much about it, and you know what you like as well, that's brilliant. And like I said, because I'm a reader first, and I fell in love with crime fiction as a reader first. So if you want me to wax lyrical about, you know, the books that I love, I'll happily do that for hours, and then remember that I'm writing them as well, you know. But what I love about book bloggers is the excitement, and if they're excited, I know I'm doing the right thing. If they're going, you know, I kind of read it before and I sort of know where it's going, then I'm being predictable, and I don't want to be predictable with this. To a certain extent, in contemporary romance, it's sort of predictable, because you want there to be a particular type of ending. For me, it's about the journey writing that. But with crime fiction, it's about, I want to fox people. I don't want people telling me that they guessed all the twists. I want to still shock, even if someone says they guessed who did it, I still want to shock people with the things that are going on as well. So, and I know that I'm always going to get a brilliant opinion, particularly from bloggers, from readers who love that. Crime readers are scary because they know their stuff. I mean, especially with the police procedure, like I have to put a disclaimer in all of them going, if there's any mistakes, it's down to me, it's not down to anybody else. It's because I know how people know their stuff, and that's such a blessing for me as an author to get to chat to people that are excited about books. If you talk to people and they're like, why do you write books then? Why aren't you making $1 million? Why aren't you Jed Mercurio? You're like, after a while, it gets a bit wearing. But if you talk to other people that love those stories and they're excited about what you've written, I mean, that's better than winning any prize on the planet. It's just brilliant.
How different literally do you have to have on for? I haven't written any romance. I don't know. I think I would automatically veer into murder and mayhem.
I think
What are the different things that you need to consider with romance?
with romance, it's all about the who and the why rather than the what.
Okay.
Because a lot of the time it's a journey towards what's going on. And there's no characters in my books that are like, if I could just have a man, my life would be complete. Because I'm like, people don't like that. I think I write a lot of kind of, they're not complicated characters, they're just human. I want people to be shouting at my characters occasionally because they're making stupid mistakes and daft assumptions. For the last few years, I've been writing kind of he said, she said books. So 50% is from one character and 50% is from the other. And I found that's quite good because if somebody's being an idiot, and they are very often, they'll just do something and you're like, what are you doing? You can then do the next chapter from their point of view where they turn away and go, oh, I was such an idiot there. And it's really kind of getting your reader into the characters' heads. And I think making really authentic characters, that's something. But I think that happens if you can do authentic characters in any in one genre. You can do it in any genre. It's about making people that you could imagine meeting, working with, seeing down the street, meeting in the coffee shop. It's just observing people, and you have so much fun with that because you're like, why are you that way? Oh, now I'm going to tell you a story from your childhood, and it's there. And so I think that's the thing. And I think with romance, it's about making tiny things epic. In crime, it's about making epic things tiny because you're forensically looking at all the details, and so it is a real mirror image. But in romance, it's about everything, the significance of everything. Because when you're falling in love with someone, like the way they look at you, you could be obsessing about it for weeks. Or the way that, they handed you a cup and their finger brushed. That's all you think about for ages. And it's making those things like epic with a soundtrack, really making them huge because it's about the emotion of it and how it makes you feel. So I think anyone can write romance. You just make it really honest and make it, like I say, make the little things big and the big things little. That makes sense.
It does. Before we went live, we were talking about how almost all of your romance books are standalones, apart from the New York ones.
The New York ones, the cast from the first book is the supporting cast in the second, but it's a standalone story.
Yeah. And how you're really enjoying writing the Cora series. So do you think, are we going to get any standalones that are crime fiction standalones?
I have ideas.
I feel like you're the kind of person that you've got 1,000 ideas buzzing around. You'll make notes and then eventually something will just pop out at you and you'll go, right, I've just got to write that one now.
Sometimes they just kind of sit there. So the idea that I have that I'm playing with at the moment started off as a short story that I did for My Weekly. So My Weekly, very, very lovely, let me write for them. And now let me write for them as MJ White, which is exciting because I get to do crime short stories, which I've never done before. And so I had a character in one of them who was just, she wouldn't leave me alone afterwards. And I was like, oh, I've got to write you. So that's kind of who is sort of playing away in the background. But yeah, I really like the series. I love being able to kind of just like play with those characters, and because having never planned to write a series before, it's a different way of thinking, but it's so lovely because there are ongoing storylines that can run and run. I mean, from given the option, they could go on for a long time, and there's other things obviously within the actual books themselves. So we'll see, but yeah, there's always the option for standalones. I do have a standalone that needs a lot of work. Because I got too scared right when Cora was sort of roundly rejected the first time. I still wanted to write something dark, and so I wrote one that was it's a hostage situation in a coffee shop. And that was so much fun to write, but it does need a lot of work. Now I know what I know having written these. So yeah, there's all kinds of ideas floating around, and what I'll do is if I have an idea now, I'll sit and write the first chapter. So I have lots of chapter ones everywhere. Which is quite fun. But it's good because I think if you just write it down as a bullet point, you can feel like you've already written it. But it's that thing. It's like being a kid in the playground where you go, what if this happened? And so I'll write it, and if by the end of the first chapter I want to carry on writing, then I take it as a good sign. But they're all scribbled away, and so every now and again I'll just like pull them out, do a little bit of work on them.
That's a brilliant point. The thing of, if I write all the bullet points, I feel like I've written it because I've answered all of the questions.
Yeah.
That's resonating with my current situation.
I see.
So, write an opening chapter. Okay. Karen Huxtable said, Miranda is a blast from my past. Karen is our new interview, our new author chat interview. I can't get my words out with excitement. Many years ago, Miranda did an event with Kathy Bramley and friends at Exeter Library. Great to see you in the crowd.
Hi, Karen. I remember that. It was such a good. We sold out. We had a sold out library event. Yeah, we did like kind of a mini tour of the Southwest, and ended up at Exeter Library, and it was fantastic. Well, lovely to see you, Karen. Thank you for joining us. I miss that. If you ever want me back, happy to come back. It's all good.
There you go, Karen. She's not actually at the library anymore, but I wonder if she could still go and do some events there. That might be fun.
It could be good. It could be good.
Laura said, Louise Jensen writes psychological thrillers, then writes romances with a twist under the pen name Amelia Henley, standalones in both genres. The Art of Loving You broke my cold, dark heart, Laura.
Those books are fantastic. Yeah, they're a real... And again, it's that thing that maybe 10 years ago, if you'd said a romantic thriller, people would be like, oh, no. But then you look at Louise writing as Amelia Henley, you look at Adele Parks. I mean, Adele Parks has just had phenomenal success after being known as a kind of I hate the term, I'm just going to say women's fiction. Men can't read it. Women's fiction author. If you have a beard, you can't read this book. But she was known for that. And then her career now has just gone. I mean, she was stratospheric before, but even more so with these kind of romantic thrillers. Lisa Jewell does it brilliantly as well. So, yeah, I think as well, because romance is exciting and it's wonderful, but there are dark sides even when you have a lovely story. And all of my contemporary romances still have moments where I want people to be sobbing on the bus or scared or worried, or because I think that's what you do with your friends in real life. So that's what I try and do. I never have it where it's like, you know, she has the perfect life and all she needs is a man. It's like, oh, I want to read 400 pages of that. I want there to be some, I want to be screaming at them because they're being idiots. That's the thing.
Which is completely what would happen.
I want it to feel like, you know, if you've got two friends and they are havering around each other and you know they should be together and everyone knows they should be together. And then they finally get together and like, it was a complete surprise to us and everybody in the friend group
knew.
Finally. But I think that's the thing. And there are some really dark reasons why people don't want to commit. There's a really rich vein for any author. And the number of crime sort of stories that you read that have a romantic motivation, even if the person who has got a really skewed idea of what that romance is, it's all to do with emotion and feeling like you belong and wanting somebody to think you're the most important person. And if a serial killer wants that from you, it's not quite the same as like the boy next door, but there's still that there's just any direction it could go. And for an author, I mean, that's just catnip.
And there is some excitement in that. I know I've read books where, and no titles and authors are coming to my head because it's probably from a couple of years ago. There was one that I read where there was a romance with a serial killer. Yeah. And she was well aware of who he was. Why can't I think what this book is? Maybe it's a good idea that I can't because it could be a spoiler. But I think that's, as long as it's fictional, I think that's a really interesting thing to explore.
I think it's from a psychological point of view, what makes somebody, I mean, even just, obviously serial killer is kind of one end of the spectrum, but how many people put up with traits in their partner that they really hate or that goes against everything they believe in because they love that person? And, you know, people go on about love. I mean, there's been a lot recently. Whenever you see any books mentioned in a certain genre of the press, they'll be very sniffy about romance and they'll say it's fluffy and it's rubbish, but actually it's so vital.
They picked it up and actually read it.
Well, no, they don't. They look at the covers and then they don't even look at the covers. Sometimes they just assume that everything is fluffy. And yet all the women's fiction that I've read is true to life, and it has life and loss and fear and all the things that make life what it is. It just happens to have a cover with two people kissing on the front cover, one leg. For some no reason, a lot of them just have a woman. There could be the bloke is never allowed on the cover. I'm not quite sure why. But yeah, so I think, but people kill for love. So it's got to be a powerful emotion, and it's got to be a huge, powerful motivator. And also, even if you have obviously, let's touch wood and hope the vast majority of people watching have never actually wanted to kill for love. And if you do, don't mention it, because
and don't follow through with it.
Yeah, don't take that through. But the idea of when a love breaks down and somebody goes, I literally feel like I'm dying. For it to be that strong an emotion, it means that it's a really powerful motivator, and it's powerful to look at as an author and say, well, what's the extent that somebody would go to? What would they overlook for someone? What would they be prepared to give up? And it could be they want to, just give up where they live or give up their job, but it might be give up their morals. It might be, what you see it all the time when you see these true crime things of people that go, why did you stay with him? And it's like, because I loved him. But you helped him murder all these people because I loved him, So I think, that's fascinating for an author to go. And it's not fluffy. Never fluffy, I don't think.
No, one of the books has just come to me. It's called Killing Pretties by Rob. Why is his last name not coming to me? I'm sorry, Rob.
I know which one you mean, but I can't remember.
I will have a look for that. So when you are thinking of your series and you get the idea for Cora and I'm not going to pronounce this right, synesthesia?
Synesthesia, yeah.
Synesthesia, not bad.
Yeah.
Were there other things that you thought of first before you finally went, no, that's it, that's what I'm hitting upon?
I came up with her ability first, and then I had to find a story that fit. So it wasn't a given that it was a crime book first. She appeared and it was a what if straight away. So initially I thought, well, is it someone that, reunites people with things they've lost? And could that be kind of, a sort of an emotional, uplifting story of someone? And there have been some books in recent years that have been written from that point of view, not from the point of view that somebody's necessarily can hear voices from it, but trying to track down what things that belong to people. But then I thought, what would happen if a little girl went missing and her belongings were being sent back to police? And it mirrored a case 7 years ago, and then I was on there straight away. So Hannah Perry, who's the little girl who goes missing in Secret Voices, she appeared quite quickly, and then when she did, then I knew where I was going. And then it was a dare to, okay, well, I love police procedural, so can I write a police procedural with this in? And I loved watching, the latest series has just been Unforgotten by Chris Lang.
Oh.
So that is, if anyone asks me what my big inspiration was for writing that, it was Unforgotten and it was Broadchurch. So ironically, two things that they're not books, but the writing in them, it's all about the people that are brought together with this singular event and what happens to them and why they're there. And that was what fascinated me. I realised it wasn't about the car chases, and although there are car chases in there.
There are car chases, yeah.
There's good cars, there's guns, there's all sorts of stuff. But yeah, it was that how did it get there, and how does that affect the people that are there? Which I think Chris Lang does just incredibly well. I loved the new series; it was amazing.
I watched it all in one go.
Do you know, I made myself watch it one a week, and it nearly killed me.
Oh no!
Not
after previous spoilers from various series is all I'm going to say.
Yes.
That I didn't fall prey to, thankfully, but some of my friends have been very upset with spoilers from things within an hour of it being released, kind of.
Yeah, I just stayed off Twitter on Monday nights. That's all I could do. La 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 la.
Yeah.
Just muted Unforgotten as a word. But no, it was that, and again with Broadchurch, particularly the first series of Broadchurch, that was all about the aftermath, and then piecing it together. And that was really, that kind of, once I kind of made that connection, that was what really pushed Cora forward, and that was why I carried on writing, even though I was getting lots of no's. It was kind of, no, I still feel that there's a route for this, rather than just someone goes missing and we'll see. I mean, it's not a spoiler, but in The Secret Voices, it isn't that a child goes missing and then you find out at the end whether they're alive or dead. You actually hear from Hannah as well. So I wanted that. I wanted
there
that.
There are very powerful Hannah scenes that have stayed in my head.
I was so pleased that they did. And I felt it would be wrong for me not to. And also because when I first started writing, I wasn't a mom. And a friend of mine, I read it to a writing group that I was part of, and a friend of mine went, "This is fine now," but because I was very pregnant at the time, she went, "When your baby's born, you're going to want to know what's happening." So I thought, that's actually true.
Yeah.
So it changed that, because becoming a mom, especially becoming a mom of a little girl, meant that it really changed. And I need to know she's okay. Even though she's in peril, I need to know she's still around. I need to know what's happening. So that changed how it was. But it was, again, it's how that situation is affecting her and what decisions she makes, where she is. And so that was, a really, really big motivation in writing the first book.
I find that really interesting, actually, that there are books that I found it very, very difficult to read because my children were a similar age. Now, mine are older than yours, so quite a big age gap. And one of my favourite authors, two of my favourite authors, they write scenes involving children that have meant that I can't read the books anymore, which is a shame because they are utterly phenomenal authors. But people have asked me, and I'll never name them, and I'll still recommend the books to people, but I can't read them. One of them in particular, I was talking to Kaz about because it's quite a different thing talking to Kaz about how I feel about something. She's my best friend and we do interviews together, but I'd never say it online. And there was one particular scene in one book. I loved the book, but this scene gave me nightmares and upset me for months. And would literally wake me up in a cold sweat in the night. I mean, the writing is phenomenal, but I won't be reading any for a while.
It's really hard, and I think it is a worry. I'm not of there's a particular kind of discussion that goes on in the crime community that, funnily enough, I saw first from the outside and then as a crime writer, see it from the inside. That it's like, oh, it's always young girls and it's always very gratuitous, and I'm kind of, but there is a responsibility to reflect what actually happens in real life and the number of young women that die.
And that's why it was so powerful, because it was so realistic.
And it's, but I think as a writer, you understand that you've got power. You have power. You want to make people cry. You want to make people laugh. You want to fox them, with kind of taking them down wrong alleys and all of that stuff. But there is that thing of like how much you show. That's not giving a spoiler away, but in The Silent Child particularly, I didn't show. It's all remembered and it's all snippets, and you don't need to see what's going on. You need to see the shock that it has in other people and the characters. So I think that's the thing. And the same with, now obviously I'm getting bodies in. Which is, that's a whole load of the whole thing of it, but you don't want anyone to see your Google searches when you're a crime author. The things you have to look for, just I'm gonna need to know about this, and I'm not sure, what happens to how long does a body have to be there before it stops bleeding, and just not things you're ever gonna get in a pub quiz. Really interesting, but interesting. I've learned a lot about forensics and I've learned a lot about pathology in the last sort of 18 months. I didn't think I'd ever need to know. But I think it's about showing something that's authentic. But you have to make that decision about how far you take it. And I'm generally quite squeamish, so I don't like going into loads of detail. But there are people that write it, it's fantastic. But you're right, there are some authors that I love and I have to skim read bits because I'm like, yes, I know. So I still haven't forgiven Will Dean for using an analogy of a watermelon. That's all I'm saying. rid of Wildine. You'll know. It's like, I can't eat watermelon now because every time I eat watermelon, I think about that scene. Thank you very much, Wildine. What is it?
Are you a bit less hesitant now about what you type into Google than when you first started? Was there quite a lot of trepidation, and now you think, yeah, I'll just type whatever?
I always put for a book afterwards, even though then it skews. Even nobody's watching my Google results, but just in case they are.
That's really funny.
And yeah. What's the? Oh, I had to do that first. Well, when I told my editor that The Silent Child started with a body, she was really chuffed. It's totally different. It's funny actually, the edit notes that you get from contemporary fiction compared to the edit notes that you get from crime fiction. So in contemporary fiction, they go, pare it back. It's a little bit over the top. It's like that. With crime fiction, it's like, can we have a car chase? Can we have another body? You need a bit more gore in this. Like, this is brilliant. It's so good. But yeah, so I do still put for a book, just in case Bob from the National Security Agency is happening to be. He must be really bored if he's looking at my Google searches. But yeah, occasionally when I'm writing, particularly when I'm writing a first draft, some of the stuff that you have to Google, and then some of the sites that you have to be really careful what you click on as well, because it's very strange things online that you don't find when you're writing romance generally. So it's been a bit of an education, I think.
Now, we often ask if you've acted out a scene while you're writing. I'm wondering about car chases. How do you go about writing car chases?
I watch a lot of telly. I watch far too much telly. It's just imagining. I think I do read out the last thing that I do, for regardless of what type of book I'm writing. When I'm doing the proof, I will read it out with all the accents, bad as they are. I'm so glad that I don't do my own audiobooks because it would be horrific. But yeah, so really bad Glasgow accent for Anderson, and kind of really awful Suffolk accents for Dave Wheeler and Rob. But yeah, so I do read it out loud, at which point I just have to lock myself away in here in my office, and my family just think it's hysterical because I do the whole thing. I have to read out all the bits. But yeah, with car chases, I think it's just watching far too much telly. It's kind of, I sort of imagine how I'd see it on screen. I write very visually anyway. And so I can kind of imagine, I sort of put myself in the car and work out what it's like. You know, if you had to take a corner suddenly, where's your head gonna hit? I mean, I drive with my mum quite a bit. She's quite hairy now, so I just sort of speed that up. She's not watching. Hi, mum. But yeah, I think it's putting yourself in that position and hoping that in real life you're never going to find yourself in that position to see that it's wrong. So as long as it reads authentically, I think it's all right.
I think I've got in my head now a scene from Only Fools and Horses where Del Boy is helping Raquel to learn lines for a play, and he starts to act, and she's like, "What are you doing?" No, just read it.
Yeah, no, I do it so because a lot of when I'm trying to work, if I get stuck on something in a scene, particularly when I'm writing a first draft, I go and do the washing up, because there's something about doing something else that you don't really have to think about. Yeah. Maybe having your hands in warm soapy water, I don't know, that just frees my head up. And so very often I'll find myself kind of chatting through, but just happily talking to myself, because the writers aren't balmy enough as it is. And my family would just tiptoe in and out of the kitchen and not say anything because I go, you're doing this and you're doing that, and like acting it out. But then it just helps me to get it in my head, and then I can write it down. And also because very often I'm not able to write it down straight away, so I have to imagine it. So it is like being the kid in the playground, dashing around playing all the games, all the car chase. And when I was a kid, I used to play Cagney and Lacey, which shows my age. I used to be allowed to stay up and watch Cagney and Lacey. And me and my friends used to like dash around the playground being Cagney and Lacey. So it's essentially that, but I get paid for it, which is really cool.
No, I don't want the answer in. Obviously, I'm not asking you for any spoilers, but I am intrigued to know, do you know what happens with a certain two people? And how far ahead do you know what you think is going to happen? Have you got kind of ideas for the future in your head? Or are you very much book to book? Oh, okay.
I have ideas for the future in my head. Quite what's going to happen with them, I don't know. I sort of see when I'm writing the first draft what feels right. I don't think it's gonna happen. I mean, if there was a book for, I don't think it would happen in book 4. But there are other things, and obviously there's another couple within the CID thing, which took me by surprise when I was writing the first draft of it. Actually, I wasn't expecting that, and I was like, "Ooh, hello." So yeah, I don't know. I've got ideas, but nothing sort of set in stone. But it is going to be something. I might not be able to keep it going as long as Jane Casey has, but that sort of, there'll be little bits, I think. Just pepper it, keep everybody going. But I think you might, as you discover more about them, you might see reasons why they're hanging back, if they are hanging back, and if they decide not to hang back, what that could do. So I don't know. That's a really rubbish answer. I'm sorry.
No, it's a great answer, because really, even though I wanted to know if you knew, you're not really going to be able to say too much about it. There's no way, because you don't want to give things away. You might not have fully formed the ideas in your head yet, or you might have some things that you think are fixed that could maybe change even while you're writing the next one.
There are some things that can change because it depends on what's happening to other characters, and because their lives are becoming more intertwined in the investigations now, because Cora is very much an outsider in the first one, and really in The Silent Child, still she's finding her feet, and there will be things that shake that, because there are for all the team. There are things that shake their resolve in what they're doing. But yeah, there's several options of what could happen, and it may be that they sort of merge as I'm writing. So I'm letting myself discover that to a certain extent as well, which is fun. But you haven't heard the last from them, I don't think. I think there's more in the pipeline. I think there's more for them. If I get the opportunity to write it, there's definitely more.
I think the challenge you've given yourself as well, which is really exciting for us as readers, is that with each case, all of the characters change. So they change individually, they change within the team, they change within each significant friendship, work relationship. You have got so many levels, so many things that you are juggling, yet it just flows. It's so smooth, and everything feels like really well oiled. And I don't know how you're doing this.
I have a lot of notes. I now have a notebook that has everything in. If I've mentioned birthdays, I tend to not to mention ages. I kind of hint age. I think the only person that you know definitely how old they are is probably Drew Ellis, DC Drew Ellis, because he's 25 in the first book.
Yeah.
But there's different, like there's a year between The Secret Voices and The Silent Child. There's 2 months between The Silent Child and Leave No Trace. And so I'm going to play with that a little bit, because I don't want to get to the situation where I'm kind of ahead of myself. But also that sometimes I think it's good. I mean, particularly between book 2 and book 3, you need to see them still reeling from the events.
That's what I was going to say. It needed to be very close, because otherwise you've given them too much time to get over the events in book 2.
The events,
because people might not have read it. So I'm not going to spoil anything, but you need that. You need it to still be quite fresh, and you need it to be, for example, this is not what happens in the book, but somebody maybe drops something and it makes a bang, and that kind of throws something into the air, or it could be a car door slamming. Just wait, that isn't what happens in this book. I'm giving examples of little things that kind of, you need that still to be quite tied to the impact of the things that happen. You need them not to have had this long time to deal with their emotions.
Yeah, because that's the other thing as well, is that, I mean, if you watch, I love watching 24 Hours in Police Custody. It's like my catnip. I love watching it. But you're aware with that it's not just the one case that they're working on, that they go from like a massive murder case to then doing a missing persons case. Sometimes they run concurrently. And that's that must be so difficult from a human point of view, because you're never given any chance to kind of deal with what's happening. You just sort of have to compartmentalize it and move it on. And that's fascinating for me as an author, is to go, what effect does that have on you? And also, it's not necessarily the investigation, it's things that happen to the team and within the team and outside of the team as a kind of an outside pressure, which is still there, because that changes things and they change.
Yeah.
But I think that just makes it more exciting for me, because no one's left kind of unharmed or unscathed, because they wouldn't be.
No, of course not.
To certain different extents, which gives you so much scope for what happens next. And then are they more likely to trust a particular character in the next one because of what's recently happened? Whereas a year further on, a lot of stuff will have been forgotten, or grudges could have had a year to grow. I mean, all of those things, it's great because it gives you kind of colour outside of the actual investigation itself. So hopefully there's enough going on to keep your attention, to keep you turning the pages, which is essentially what I want to do, which is why you know, at the end of each chapter, there is pretty much a cliffhanger on it at the end of each one. And I will swap from one character to the next. So there's stuff hanging, because I don't think you ever get to the end where, you know, everything resolves and everybody laughs like at the end of Scooby-Doo. It's not like that. You have to show things going on. But then hopefully then means people will want to read more. They've then got the potential for more stories. So, yeah.
It is. And I never know. Obviously, Cora is going to be very central to each book. It's her series, but I never really know exactly how it's going to go with the other voices, the other points of view. And I like that. I'm never sure exactly where it's coming from. And I think that keeps it really interesting. It must be nice for you as well to be able to write it from so many different points of view. You're not stuck with, but you're not just using the same two characters, for example. It's not this one and that one in every book.
And also that I think when I wrote the first draft of The Secret Voices, one of the big things I learned is that just because you start off with people talking in a certain order, they don't have to. I don't know why. You know, I've written so many books, but I hadn't worked that one out. That it doesn't have to go Cora, Rob, Anderson, Wheeler. It has, you know, it can move about. You can have two from Cora's perspective. You can, so it's really cool. And you sort of become like a director. You're directing which camera shot. Who are you following?
I like that.
What are you doing? And so that's really interesting for me. Watching things like Unforgotten, watching things like Broadchurch. I watch it for fun first. I don't sit there with a notebook because that would drive me insane. I feel like homework. But afterwards you go, oh, because they followed this character, and the reason they followed this character for this much time and then they went to a different character is because they're establishing it, and then you're asking questions about the other characters, so they're going back and stuff. So that really helped as well, because I just go with who I feel should have the camera in that one. What's going to give the reader an advantage over the characters, but also what's going to set things up that then might not be what you think they're going to be. And learning how to do red herrings has been one of my joys. I think it's just because with the first one, because it had been written for so long, and I took it as far as I could, and I was like, it needs to be published, or it needs to have a publisher or an editor now telling me what to do, because I don't know anyone. I'm such a newbie. I'm learning how to do it. But the first edit was all trying to put twists in, and I'm never doing that again now, because so it's really fun imagining those twists at the beginning now, and then sort of building the story around them. So yeah, it's just basically, it feels like a game most of the time. So it's good fun.
It's really good. I've just noticed it's already 8 o'clock.
I know, it's amazing.
I just glanced down and thought, right, okay, I didn't even see that coming. So give us a recap of the series so far.
So, do you want me to go from all three, or just do the most favorite? So it begins with The Secret Voices. A little girl goes missing. 9-year-old Hannah Perry goes missing, and she goes missing during an Easter market. Just disappears from CCTV, and they don't know where she's gone. And then whoever's taken her starts sending back items from her school bag. It's her last day of school. She's broken up for Easter, and sends back items from the school bag. The police don't know. They can forensically link it to the little girl, but they don't know whether she's alive or dead. And 7 years before, there was a similar situation where it ended in tragedy. So they're in a race against time to try and find the little girl. And Cora was young when the first thing happened, and she realizes that her gift could have made a difference because she could listen to the things that were coming back. So she ends up getting involved in the police investigation. So when they open the evidence bag with the school tie-in, which is the first thing that comes back, she can hear the little girl screaming, "Give it back," because she knows the little girl's alive. And so that's the first book. Then a year later, I can't say what happens in the end, but there's a reason why it's a year later. In this one, a body's found in an abandoned barn on an old farm in the middle of nowhere, and the police initially think that it's related to drugs, but then they find the body is a local school teacher who's really well respected. And at the same time, Cora is now working. She works for a university in the first book. She's working for an educational psychology department at the local education authority in the second one. And she has a case that initially isn't linked to a teenage girl, a young girl who stopped speaking 11 months ago, and they don't know why. And so she's in the process of sorting that out, and the cases might converge in that one. And then in the new book, Leave No Trace, there is a local man from Suffolk. All of my books are Suffolk set, who went missing 15 years before, and is kind of like when there's famous cases of kids going missing and people going missing, and locally everybody knows that name, and so that's the case with this. And he's suddenly sighted on CCTV. And because his case was featured on a true crime documentary, there is a worldwide cult of watchers who watch out for kind of supposed messages from him that have been coming for the last 15 years. And they have this theory that on the 15th anniversary of the day that he went missing, he's coming back to exact his revenge. And so Cora's now involved with the CID team, and she gets called in. I won't say why because it's going to be away. But yeah, they have to try and find they don't know if it is him or if it's his kind of acolytes who've made him into this image. And so, yeah, it's about kind of like toxic masculinity and online stuff. And then the very real threat that this person might be coming back to exact revenge, or someone doing it in his name. So there you go. It's not concise, sorry, but there we go.
No, that was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant, because you're saying just enough without giving anything away.
Hoping. No spoilers. No spoilers.
Thank you so much. I'm going to thank everyone who's watched and joined in. And Karen did say it was sold out, the library event in Exeter.
There we go.
Thank you so much. I absolutely love talking about Cora Layle with you. So hopefully you'll come back for the next one.
Let's hope. I keep everything crossed.
Thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to reading the next one.
Thanks very much. Well, hopefully there'll be one soon.